Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The earth was placed on the water by His inconceivable potency. The Lord is all powerful, and therefore He can sustain the huge planets either on the water or in the air as He likes. The tiny human brain cannot conceive how these potencies of the Lord can act. Man can give some vague explanation of the laws by which such phenomena are made possible, but actually the tiny human brain is unable to conceive of the activities of the Lord, which are therefore called inconceivable. Yet the frog philosophers still try to give some imaginary explanation. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport. Om Ajnanatimmirandhasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Galadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. The prayers by the sages is concluded in the previous verse. Maitreya is now speaking to Vidura. He is continuing to describe the events that happened at the beginning of creation. The appearance of Lord Varaha. What happened after the sages and the saintly persons offered their prayers, the Lord being thus worshipped by all great sages and transcendentalists. Worship of the Lord is possible only for those who are able to recognize His personality. The personal form of the Lord is very difficult to understand for ordinary people. Ordinary people have to be guided by learned transcendentalists who are well versed with the Vedic wisdom. Definitely in the Vedas, the Lord's personal form is described. But those who are not having proper knowledge of the Vedas, they sometimes read descriptions of the Lord's impersonal feature in the Vedas and conclude that the absolute truth is impersonal, conclude that the absolute truth does not have any form. This conclusion is because of not having proper understanding of the Vedas. In the Bhagavatam itself, in the prayers of the saintly persons, it is clearly said that the inhabitants of the most pious planets have been purified by the drops of water sprinkled from the shoulder hairs by the shaking of the body of Lord Varaha. So if they are becoming purified by the water that is sprinkled, then certainly the form of the Lord Varaha is completely transcendental. Otherwise it's not possible. The Prabhupada mentions the Ganga Jal. Why is it considered pure? Not because of physical purity or material purity. No. Material purity, any water can be purified. There are so many processes to purify water. That is not the reason why Ganga is considered supremely pure. It is considered pure because it is emanating from the toes of the Supreme Lord. Ganga's another name is Vishnu Padodaka. Vishnu Pada Udaka, water emanating from the toes of the Lord, feet of the Lord. Similarly, the water sprinkled from the shoulder hairs of Lord Varaha is purifying the inhabitants of the topmost planets, who are all completely pious. They are exclusively dedicated for self-realization. Such pure personalities are having knowledge of the absolute truth as having personal form. Now, this form of Lord Varaha is not the eternal form in the spiritual world. The Lord assumes certain forms for the sake of his pastimes. Keshava Dhrita Meena Sharira. Jayadeva Goswami, in his Dashavatara Stotra, he says, Keshava, the Supreme Lord Krishna, assumes the form of a fish. Keshava Dhrita Meena Sharira. Keshava Dhrita Sukara Rupa. Sukara Rupa means the form of Varaha or hog. He assumes that form for the sake of his pastimes. And such forms are understood by great sages, great saintly persons. Munibihi, Brahmavadibihi. Not only they understand, they also worship the Lord. By offering wonderful prayers, they worship the Lord. So such worship is not some sentimental outpouring of emotions by sentimental devotees. No. It is a factual description of the Lord's position and form and glories by those who are having perfect knowledge about the absolute truth. In the beginning of the Bhagavatam, Vyasadeva, the author, declares, Satyam Param Dhimahi. I meditate upon the absolute truth. Satyam Param, absolute truth. And who is that absolute truth? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhagavan Vasudeva. Bhagavan means form. The form of the personality of God. That is Bhagavan. Vasudeva refers to the divine son of Vasudeva. In the Upanishads, there is a verse that the personality who has appeared as the son of Devaki and Vasudeva is actually the absolute truth. Brahmanyo Devaki Putro, Brahmanyo Madhusudano, Brahmanyo Pundarikaksho, Brahmanyo Vishnurachyutaha. So, the Supreme Brahman has appeared as the son of Devaki and Vasudeva. The identity is very clearly established in the Upanishads. The Mayavadis conveniently leave out all these portions of the Upanishads, or they have interpretation of these verses. Interpretation. What is the interpretation? Oh, Brahman is taking a material form and coming to this world as incarnation. This is the theory. Incarnation means Brahman is assuming material form. But that is not the description given in the Shastra. The Shastra says the form of the incarnation is completely spiritual. The form of the incarnation is completely spiritual. Bhagavad Gita, where is it said the form of the incarnation is completely spiritual? Quick. Ajopi san avyayatma bhutanam ishwaropi san prakritim swam adhishtaya sambhavami atmamayaya. This is the words that describing the incarnation of the Lord. Sambhavami means the Lord incarnates. Avyayatma, his transcendental form never deteriorates. It's not a material form. It's not a form of matter. So, the Mayavadis are completely mistaken. They don't have authentic proof. Neither they have proper understanding of the absolute truth. Complete understanding. Their understanding is incomplete. So therefore it is said here that the Lord, being thus worshipped by all the great sages and transcendentalists, touched the earth with his hooves. Touching the earth with his hooves means that touch is completely transcendental. This Varaha form is not an ordinary hog. It is not possible for an ordinary hog to fly in the sky. Even if some asura can assume the form of a hog and fly in the sky, what is the specific description in the Bhagavatam which indicates it is not some asura's trick? Because in the beginning Brahma thought, is this some asura playing some trick? Then suddenly out of his nostril one small form of a boar came out. He couldn't understand what is this form. So what confirmed for the sages headed by Brahma that appearance of that boar-like form was not the trick of some asura? What assurance was given to them? Roaring sound which reverberated in all the three worlds. Nobody can roar so loudly that all the three worlds that sound is heard. What does Prabhupada say? The roaring sound of any living being in this world is proportional to the size of the body. So big mountains, their size is very, very big. They have roaring sound. But that is limited to only one planet or a few planets. That sound cannot be heard throughout the universe. That sound cannot be heard throughout the universe. So, the sages are confirming that form of Varaha is the incarnation of the Supreme Lord. And he has appeared for the purpose of rescuing the earth, and he did that. Not only he rescued the earth, but he also placed it on water simply by touching with his hooves. How can such a gigantic planet float on the water? It's not possible. It's not possible to float on the water for anybody. But the Lord can do it. Whatever he wants, he can do. What is the proof, or what is the example given? He is floating so many planets in the air. Not only floating, they are moving in their orbit at such high speed. Very high speed they are moving. And they are not falling down. They remain in the orbit. And the wonderful thing about the planets floating in the air is that such heavy planets, how can they float in the air? They're so heavy. It's so big. Secondly, the speed at which they are moving, do we feel the earth is moving at such a high speed around its orbit? Do we feel the shaking of the earth? They try to design vehicles which will go at a very high speed and there will be no vibration. But high speed means vibration. So, it is not possible for any created being to duplicate whatever activities are performed by the Lord. Even the creation of the Lord is extraordinary. The inferior creation is extraordinary. This material creation is the inferior creation of the Lord. The superior creation is in the spiritual world. So even the inferior creation, the Lord is able to display such wonders. That's why the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes his opulences in the material world. He describes some of his opulences. And he tells Arjuna that by a fragment of myself I sustain and pervade the entire universe. Entire creation, not universe. Entire creation. He enters into the material energy. He enters into every planet, every universe. He enters into every planet. He enters into every living entity's heart. He enters into every atom. Who can do this? Only the Supreme Lord can do it. Nobody else can do it. So these are all facts which are described in the Shastra. This cannot be overlooked or ignored by anybody as to what is the transcendental position of the Supreme Personality of God, whose form is completely spiritual. So, Prabhupada says, man can give some vague explanation by the laws of the laws by which such phenomena are made possible. Gravitation. How do you understand that the planets are floating or moving in their orbit? Gravitation. What is this law of gravitation? They are not able to give proper explanation. They are not able to give proper explanation. So, the tiny human brain is unable to conceive of the activities of the Lord, which are therefore called inconceivable. That's the correct explanation in the Shastra. All the activities of the Lord are inconceivable to the human brain. It's not possible to understand. Only transcendentalists who are enlightened by Vedic wisdom, they can understand to some extent these activities of the Lord. Just like in Chaitanya Charitamrita it is explained, Ananta Sesha is supporting all the universes on his hoods. And he feels as if some mustard seeds are resting on his hoods. That's the way he perceives the universes lying on his hoods. So for him it is insignificant. That is his power. Relative power. Actually it's not relative power, it's absolute power. Any weight he can lift, any weight he can hold. But for our understanding, this example is given. He feels like a mustard seed is on his head. Effortlessly he is lifting. So if Ananta can hold such huge universes with millions of planets on his hood effortlessly, what is the difficulty for Krishna to lift the Govardhan hill and hold it on the little left finger? Little finger of the left hand. What is the difficulty for Krishna to do it? So, this sort of explanation is given in the scriptures, Vedic scriptures, and explained by the Acharyas, by which we can understand what is the transcendental position of the personality of Godhead. So, we have to study about the Lord, about the absolute truth, about the personality of Godhead from the authoritative source. Only devotees can understand the personality of Godhead. Non-devotees can never understand. Many verses are there in the scriptures which say, how much ever the non-devotees try to understand, they can never understand. In the 15th chapter, it is described that transmigration of the soul can be seen or understood or realized only by the transcendentalists who are able to see with divine vision. Nanu pashyanti achetasaha. Which is that verse? Utkramantam sthitam vapi bhunjanam va gunanvitam vimudha nanu pashyanti jnana chakshushaha. Only with those with, what is the translation? Read the translation. One whose eyes are trained in knowledge. Prabhupada translates Jnana Chakshushaha. One whose eyes are trained in knowledge. This knowledge is not ordinary material knowledge. It is transcendental knowledge. So with transcendental knowledge, somebody is trained, they can learn to see how the living entity quits one body and enters another body. So the phenomena of death is the phenomena of the spirit soul quitting the body. And phenomena of birth is the spirit soul entering another body, a new body. So this phenomena of birth and death, for ordinary people, it is either something to lament about or something to celebrate, some birth of a child or a newborn baby. But actually that is not what is happening. It is not birth of some child. It is actually the soul entering a body. So this movement of the soul can only be understood, seen, appreciated and explained properly by the transcendentalists, by the devotees. Other than devotees, nobody can understand. Even the 13th chapter, Krishna says, the philosophy concerning the field of activities and the knower of the field can only be understood by devotees. 19th verse, I think. (13.19). What is the verse? Somebody else can read. Iti kshetram tatha jnanam Gneyam cha uktam samasataha madbhakta eta vijnaya madbhavayopapadyate. Only devotees can understand this knowledge, the object of knowledge and the knowledge of the field of activities. Only devotees can understand. And after understanding what is the destination of devotees, they attain the same nature, or they attain Krishna's shelter in Krishna's abode. This is only for the devotees. This is not for non-devotees. Non-devotees can never understand. Field of activity, knower of the field, the activities themselves, which are carried out by material nature, sanctioned by the Paramatma, desired or initiated by the living being in this material world. All this the non-devotees can never understand. They don't know what is happening. They are bewildered, simply bewildered. So, we should always be careful to study the scriptures, to hear from the proper source about the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, and understand in the right way the explanations given in the Vedas, the logic or the reasoning with which we can actually properly understand how the Supreme Lord is completely transcendental and how he performs spiritual activities, transcendental activities, how he enlightens those who are engaged in devotional service. Divya Gyan Hriday Prakashito. By the mercy of the spiritual master, what happens? The devotee who is engaged in worshipping the spiritual master is enlightened from within the heart by the spiritual master's mercy. For devotees, it's very easy to understand. If one has especially got the grace of the pure devotee, bona fide spiritual master. Very easy to understand all these facts. Otherwise, the mundane speculators, they are engaged in so much of speculation, so much of argument, debate, so much of study, so much of research. They go on doing for millions of lives. Panthastu koti shatavatsara sampragamyo vayor athapi manaso munipungavanam sopyasti yat prapadesim na vichintya tatve govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajam. Both the Ashtanga yogis and the Jnana yogis, they are engaged in differentiating matter from spirit. Or the Ashtanga yogis are trying to find the limit of the universe. They travel to different planets and they're searching what is the limit of the universe. What does Bhagavatam say? Bhagavatam says this universe is like a tiny atom with all its coverings. 7 coverings, each one 10 times greater than the previous covering. Each covering. Earth, water, fire, air, sky, and mind and intelligence. These are the coverings, 7 coverings. So, in the center of these coverings, there's a very, very, very tiny universe compared to the size of the coverings. And that universe having millions of planets. So, what is the size of the planets? And all these universes, cluster of universes, is like one corner of the spiritual sky where there is a small cloud. That cloud cannot cover the Brahma Jyoti. It can only cover the vision of the inhabitants of the material world who perceive darkness in this material world. Darkness is due to 2 reasons. One is the covering of the universe itself. And even if the covering of the universe were to be penetrated, still, because the living beings are in illusion, they are covered by the illusory energy, all living beings in the material world. So they cannot perceive the Brahma Jyoti. They cannot perceive the Brahma Jyoti. Not possible. Even when the Lord comes, He appears with His Brahma Jyoti. But the foolish living entities think that the Lord's appearance is like that of an ordinary person. So it is not possible without the mercy of the spiritual master who enlightens the disciple from within the heart, or without the enlightenment given by the Supreme Lord who actually enlightens, just like Krishna is enlightening Arjuna, or Krishna instructs in his various incarnations the devotees. Lord Matsya instructed Satyavrata. Like that. Without such enlightenment by the Supreme Lord, it is not possible to understand the absolute truth. That is the conclusion given in all the scriptures. I'll stop here. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada.